If today
doesn't need to be convinced, yeah.
If today,
do you believe that?
Putin says the war, I stop my war, I withdraw my forces, let's talk. The war will be over. Sorted, then you bring in other partners to oversee that and come to a positive and peaceful conclusion. And that's what we now need to have urgently. There was 150,000 Russian troops amassed on the Ukrainian border. We went up to 200,000 as a total. Now that is certainly very special, and that is certainly something that qualifies as a full-fledged invasion.
Ya, saya mendapatkan kehormatan besar, ya, mendapatkan tamu yang sangat luar biasa, ya. Dan ini masih ada kaitannya dengan pembahasan saya. Kita sudah membuat 6 konten tentang konflik Rusia dan Ukraina atau Ukraina yang melibatkan negara-negara Eropa yang tergabung dalam EU, Nato khususnya, dan juga Amerika. Saya mencoba untuk sangat netral. Ya, minggu lalu atau beberapa minggu lalu saya mendapatkan kehormatan juga menerima duta besar dari Rusia, Ludmila, dan sekarang luar biasa, a gentleman from Netherlands sudah hadir ke studio. Duta besar Uni Eropa sudah hadir. Your Excellency, welcome to my studio. Yeah, Mr. Vincent Piket.
Thank you very much.
Name?
Indeed, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for inviting. It's a great pleasure.
You know Piket in Indonesia?
Oh yes, I do. I do. I frequently, if I driving through the streets, I see that the Piket office.
Piket.
So I thought it's me.
You thought that it was you?
Yes.
Oh, it's an Indonesian name, you know, Indonesian word.
I know.
You know what does it mean?
It's the officer of the guard.
Of the guard, yeah. On duty.
On duty, yeah.
Piket mean on duty.
Yeah.
Doctor on duty, nurse on duty, police on duty. This is ambassador on duty always.
Yes. So when I travel, I try to sometimes impersonate the Pikets with my business card. I introduce myself, I'm Piket, and then of course people immediately feel very impressed.
The pronunciation is Piket, yeah? Not Piquet or no?
Piket with a T.
Because you are Dutch. Yeah?
Dutch, yeah. Yes.
Nice to have you here.
Thank you.
I heard that you have watched my interview with Dr. Connie, with former Indonesian ambassador for Ukraine, former Indonesian ambassador for Washington, and also many academics coming here. You know, anything that you want to clarify or make objection, please do, your ambassador.
You know, freedom of expression.
Yes,
people will present their views, and I'm not objecting to views. I will just now and then disagree with what I hear and read. But yeah, I think in your introduction you said it very clearly. We have in Europe a tremendous crisis at our hands with the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, going to 4 months now in the duration of this conflict. It sees no perspective of diminishing in the short run. It's rather the opposite, that the shelling continues, the warfare continues, the bloodshed continues. So it's seriously disturbing, of course.
It's very bad, yeah.
In the first instance for Ukraine and the Ukrainian people, and that is number one for us. Our hearts go out to what's happening to the Ukrainian people right now. But also, if you look at it in the European context, the European continent, we had lived in Europe ever since the Second World War in peace, with the occasional tension here and there, but there was always peace in Europe, including in the days of the former Soviet Union, and including with Russia up to the recent past.
Okay.
And we were rudely awakened, of course, by the war that Russia started. We are of the very firm view that this war was unprovoked by Ukraine, was unprovoked by others, including NATO, which is often mentioned by Russian interlocutors as being part of the problem, and that what we're seeing is here just an illegal and unjustified invasion of a sovereign country. And now we are attached to sovereign territory, to the respect for that, whether it's Ukraine, ourselves, or anybody else. That's the multilateral order, that's the UN Charter, which was totally ignored and shattered through this invasion. That's seriously disturbing for us, for our sense of security as Europeans, as European countries, as individuals. This impacts us indirectly, our economy, and our sense of stability on the European continent. We have a huge inflow of refugees from Ukraine.
Ukraine, yeah.
About 6.5 million people who have fled from Ukraine to Europe, to the EU countries, where we have said we are open for you. We are you are welcome. We will provide shelter. You can find a job. Your kids will be able to go to school, medical care, etc. And that is, of course, something that we do for humanitarian reasons. At the same time, of course, it's a major burden in terms of managing such an inflow all of a sudden. And secondly, in terms of the cost. We have up to now dedicated 17 billion euros for that, and that is, of course,
from all EU members.
From the EU budget for the member states who are particularly
to support Ukraine,
to support the refugees.
The refugees only.
Only.
Say it again. How much?
17 billion euros.
17 billion.
Correct.
It's big.
It's huge. Yeah.
Huge, yeah.
But this is something we have to do, and which, in order to, save lives, and of course to, in the hope that before too long, the refugees will be able to go back home once Ukraine is peaceful again. Other costs of the conflict are also there, financial support to the government of Ukraine, for the running of the government, for the running of the social help, etc. That is what we are also doing, up to the tune of 7 billion euros already. And the last element of support is support to the defense, in military terms, funding from the EU budget for 2 billion euros as well.
Wow.
Yeah, these are costs we are making and we have to make. Ukraine has been a partner of the European Union for 2 decades already, with a very close agreement, cooperation and political agreement with us, with freedom to move without visa into the European Union. It's a country that borders on 5 of our member states.
Yeah.
So there is a very direct neighborly friendship between those member states and Ukraine. And Ukraine stands for values that we support and that we agree with, democracy, freedom of speech, for instance. And so hence our response.
Okay. Your Excellency, you know that, do you understand that in this case, I have interviewed the ambassador from Russia, and she said that it is not invasion. This is just special military operation, to take down Zelensky. So it is not invasion of the country. And if you said that European nations, are neighbor with Ukraine, and Russia claim it as well, and they have more emotional, historical relationship. And they said that it's not about Ukraine wants to enter the EU, but they complain about the intention of Zelensky to be the member of Nato. What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, the definition of special military operation versus an invasion. This is not. You won't find that definition in the dictionary, but any common sense observation of what actually goes on and went on up to now shows you that this is a simple war. There was 150,000 Russian troops amassed on the Ukrainian border. Went up to 200,000 as a total. Now that is certainly very special, and that is certainly something that qualifies as a full-fledged invasion. Secondly, if you see what the actions of the military have been and where these actions have been, this is not something targeted, focused on one area, on one problem. No, it was focused on the entirety of the Ukrainian territory, with shelling, massive shelling of Kiev and the suburbs of Kiev, with horrible bloodshed, shelling in the west of the country, very near the Polish border, and in the south, Mariupol, the port city, that had nothing to do with the Donbas region and the Luhansk region that Russia says what it was all about. It's outside that region, and so there was a sheer attack of that particular city and the region around it in order to gain control of strategic supply routes. We have got this massive military action going on, also with the use of long-range and medium-range missiles and precision missiles at land and in the sea. Well, if that is a special operation, military operation, then it is very special indeed for its massive scale and for the evident features that it has of a full-blown attack. Had it been just about these two regions, I don't think you could have possibly got a war fair at this level, at this scale, in the entirety of Ukraine, with the mobilization of so many soldiers, necessitating a mobilization also on the other side of the Ukrainian side by massive troops. So let's not pick words, but look at the reality. And the reality is what we see on television every day. Just yesterday, a missile attack against a shopping mall somewhere in the center of the country. 16 shoppers killed. Now, what's special about that? There's there's a lot of special in it, but this is sheer bloodshed amongst civilian people, which Russia is denying happens, but it does happen day after day. So hence our concern.
Yeah. Do you know that there is something like imbalance in the information from the media, because we feel it that, I mean, the information from Russian side, we cannot get it as easily as before. What do you think about that?
Well, this is the result of the total muzzling of the free press in Russia. There's only one channel possible, and that is the channel that comes to us from the Kremlin through our media outlets that have to abide by the Kremlin rules if they wish to survive. There is no free media left in Russia. The other day, the Nobel Prize winners of the editors of the Novaya Gazeta, one of the last free media, printed media in Russia, had to give up publishing their newspaper simply because they could not run it anymore in line with the principles that and the values that they as journalists believe in. And just one example. The amount of misinformation coming from the Kremlin is enormous, with very consistent attacks against the facts on the ground, denial of the facts on the ground, denial that hospitals were shelled, and that denial that schools were shelled, and that residential parts of city were utterly destroyed, like they were in the suburbs of Kiev and in the south and now in the east of the country. And that, of course, is very, very serious, because we, of course, in the countries like Indonesia, like Europe, where you have free media, we have our ability to choose and read what we like. We can compare the facts and the versions of the facts from left, right and center. Inside Russia, of course, that is no longer possible, and it means that the average citizen lives in a reality that has no bearing with the reality on the ground at all.
And what is your opinion about the issue from Russia that they fight a Nazi movement, you know, in Ukraine? That's the thing that every country, you know, in Europe maybe, doesn't want that.
Of course, we would be against it too. But again, let's look at the facts. Where are these Nazis in Ukraine? In the latest elections, they haven't even got to the parliament. Their support was far too little. Are these Nazis amongst the 6.5 million Ukrainian refugees that have fled to Europe? Well, we're still trying to find out, but they are not. And
so you don't believe that?
Well, indeed I don't. To claim that Ukraine is run by neo-Nazis is just a lie. It's a simple lie. Have the refugees who have come to Europe, have they fled Nazis? Or have they fled the Russian army? It is the latter. They fled for the violence caused by the Russian army. So there is no credible Nazi threat inside Ukraine that could possibly threaten Russia to the extent that this would justify a war. So that is on the Nazis. The other reason often given is that there was according to Russian information, a genocide happening in the Donbass region and the Luhansk region of Ukraine. Now, I'd be the first to say that those regions, which had separatist movements, which were later helped by the Russian army to consolidate that separate movement, that those regions weren't happy places. That is very evident. But genocide, absolutely no. There have been two third-party independent visits to that region in the course of the past couple of years. One by the United Nations Human Rights Council, the other by the organization called the OSCE, Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Russia is a member. Neither of these missions, expert independent missions, have found the genocide that Russia claims there was. So that too is a sheer lie, and cannot possibly amount to a justification for starting a war. Now, the third element is the the supposed threat by Ukraine joining NATO.
Yeah.
And as mentioned by Russia. Now, objectively, tell me, was there any likelihood of an imminent membership of Ukraine, for Ukraine, of NATO? There was not. There was discussion and there were some explorations, but NATO has not opened the door to Ukraine at any point in time in any concrete way. So that also is a sheer fabrication, a theory that was simply used in order to justify a military campaign inside Ukraine.
So you mean that is it not true that the Ukraine want to be the member of NATO? Is it what you said?
Indeed, there was nothing concrete.
Because this is the issue that used by Russia, to have the.
They do,
yeah.
they do, yeah. But look at the facts. There is no evidence at all of anything like that being on the near agenda.
Yeah.
In any case, that's a question that you should more discuss with NATO.
We do it one by one. Yeah, please do make the clarification from your perspective.
Yes. But the bottom line is, whatever happened in Ukraine, did it justify an invasion at the scale that we've seen? And in answer to that question, for anybody who respects the multilateral order, who respects the UN Charter, for anybody who respects that charter, there cannot possibly a justification of a warfare like Russia has started. War is in the UN Charter is very clearly defined what can cause a war, and that is a concrete and a direct threat by one country against another. That can cause a war. If you are attacked or about to be, in concrete sense, then you could respond with violence, and that was absolutely not the case. Have you seen it? I haven't. That sort of threat existed for Russia, and that in fact it did not exist for anybody. And the reasons given by Russia are sheer fabrications and disinformation, and whereby I do not wish to suggest that everything was hunky-dory in Luhansk and in Donetsk region, but that's another thing. That's the sort of thing that you need to negotiate between partners, and if the two partners can't sort it, then you bring in other partners to oversee that and come to a positive and peaceful conclusion. And that's what we now need to have urgently.
Mr. Ambassador, let's say that the intention of Ukraine to be the member of NATO correct. And what is your opinion? Let's say it is correct. It was correct.
Well, as a diplomat, you're taught not to replay to a hypothetical.
I just want to ask, do you agree with the Putin actions?
No.
The neighbor, very close neighbor in the backyard, want to be the member of NATO.
Well, the wish is one thing, but the reality is another. And we have to look at the reality, and the reality is that there was no concrete possibility for Ukraine to join NATO at any time soon that could have posed a threat to Russia. In fact, as you know, President Zelensky has, at the very early days of the war, said that if this is the only issue between Ukraine and Russia, then we won't pursue that ambition. So in that sense, President Zelensky has already offered the sort of reassurance that Russia was seeking, and still the war goes on.
So if Zelensky, very clearly denied, the accusation of his intention to make Ukraine be the member of NATO, and it will be clear, right? What do you think?
Well, I don't think that he denied it. He denied the wish, but he has taken a step back from the wish, and to clarify that position was clearly untenable and caused undesirable effects, and so that's a major compromise that he has made. Verbally, personally, to Ukraine back a couple of months ago. So indeed, what's then still the problem for Russia?
Okay, Mr. Ambassador, what makes us sad, unhappy, the consequence of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, caused so many something bad, in economy, in life, to many countries that we couldn't imagine before, especially in EU members, got problem, inflation skyrocketing, because of the cost of energy, that get the supply, from Russia, becoming very high in price.
Absolutely. I mean, that is a major problem for us as European Union. 8% inflation year on year already.
It's highest ever,
Highest ever. And our GDP growth forecast has lost 2 percentage points.
Wow.
So from 4.5 to 2, well, just above 2%. The longer the war lasts, of course, this will become a flat line. So that is a tremendous impact for us. Did we deserve it? I don't think so. But also looking beyond Europe, of course, we see the same. Inflation in countries on the North African coastal line, on the Mediterranean is high, the Sahel, very high and very serious problem for food security. Some of that already existed, of course, the food and drought problems in the Sahel, but the war has just added to the problems they face. So yes, we are very worried about that. We also for Asia, by the way, including
all over the world,
in Indonesia. I was in Lombok last week for business, and I met there with a small, a lady running a small bakery, who said that I have severe trouble paying for the wheat, the wheat flour that I need for my biscuits that I make, and so that's one very and this is
so this conflict affect all over the world.
It does.
It
does.
Not to mention America got 8.6, 8.3 inflation, and also UK, Iran, Turkey.
Everybody. So what's the answer? There's two responses I would have. First of all, we have to recognize that some of these problems of the unstable markets and the shortages on the global market for raw materials and for certain inputs, the microchips and so on, those existed already before the war, and as a result of the very fast recovery after the pandemic. We felt that in Europe and in Indonesia it was also noticeable. So that's one thing. Second thing, of course, the war has added to it, and the sheer fact that you have a war is a destabilizing circumstance. Farmers can't sow, investors won't invest, customers won't buy. So it's war causes a downturn in any economy, and but very particular on energy. 2 points. First of all, it is a fact that Russia is destroying part of the grain storage infrastructure in Ukraine. The photos are for everybody to see on the web. It's a fact that the war and the navy presence of Russia in the Gulf, in the northern parts of the Black Sea, of course, stops the trade, stops the ships from coming in and going out. Which vessel owner would do that? Which insurer would insure? Lloyd's of London, would they insure the vessels who go into a war zone? So there is a very seriously destabilized shipping situation, meaning that about 20 million tons of wheat are sitting in stores in and around Odessa in southern Ukraine. So what we're trying to do now with Ukraine, with the neighboring countries and in the EU side, is create pathways by truck, by train, to ports elsewhere in Romania, in Bulgaria, so that wheat can go to the world markets, and that is particularly, of course, something that would benefit the countries in northern Africa and the Sahel and south of that. So deblocking that is a priority for us. The UN is also working on that, and we desperately need Russia's cooperation. Secondly, on energy, what we see is something that's quite appalling. That one by one, Russia is turning off the tap of gas.
Stop supplying, reducing the supply,
bit by bit, without too much of a fuss.
And it hurts many countries in Europe.
Of course. And we are
German, Netherlands,
but
everybody,
everybody, because it's not just the member states directly affected, but it's a knock-on effect, and so this is a strategic concern and of security for us. Energy with us as here is a vital source for your economy, for your livelihoods, for preparing your food, and your nasi goreng
and the wheat, and Indomie.
Exactly.
We eat a lot of Indomie.
Exactly. So we've got, as Europe, to cut that dependence on Russian gas, particularly.
That's what you're doing now, in EU.
That's what we're doing.
But it's not easy. It takes a long time,
of course,
to replace maybe to renewable energy, and to get maybe the supply from America. That's not easy. It is distribution problem and everything.
It's not easy, and it's costly. But we have determined. We are determined that we will go down that road, and because at the end of the day we've been subject to Russian energy arm twisting already in the past, and now we know that we must stop this. And we're buying where we can on the global market, in Egypt, in the Gulf, in Qatar,
and the prices skyrocketing.
US prices are high, but that's something we will have to suffer for some time. We are going to speed up massively our renewable energy strategy, particularly wind and solar, to create the alternative supply. And lastly, we're going to speed up very much our energy efficiency measures, simply cutting demand for supply by simple measures, maybe not popular necessarily, but at the end of the day we have to make ends meet, and otherwise, of course,
you have to stop the dependency, to the supply from Russia.
Indeed,
energy.
So this is certainly something on which we hope to cooperate also with Indonesia on possible supplies, and but also on in general strengthening our energy and renewable energy cooperation.
But that Russia change, move the distribution from EU members to India, to Japan, to China. So they don't have not so big problem, in selling their energy.
Okay, I'm not sure if Japan is a buyer, but certainly
Japan buy coal. That what I heard. Yeah.
Well, that of course is something that will happen, and that of course all these countries have to see for themselves where it leaves them in the short and medium to long term. But our position is, as I've just described it, and we wanted to go down that road of renewable energy and reducing the fossil anyhow. We're now going to do that faster than we thought we would.
So you feel very unhappy with all the situation, the progress of the war. I don't know when it will stop.
Of course. Russia is a neighbor of the European Union. 6 of our member states have direct borders with Russia, and many others are connected. We used to be very, very close economically, but also people to people, and tourists going 2 ways, and cultural, historical links, tremendous. I myself, I lived and worked in Moscow for 4 years.
Oh yeah.
I know what a beautiful country that is. What a beautiful culture and history, and music, the ballet, the opera, the arts, wonderful. The Russian landscapes, the rolling landscapes, and with the. So I know that, and I feel pain when I see this happening, personally, and I'm sure it's true for millions and millions of other citizens of the European Union. But the war, it's a fact. This war has ruptured all of that, and our priority is, of course, first of all, to bring this war to an end, and to create a situation where Ukraine and Russia can negotiate a durable and lasting solution for all the difference they have. Negotiation supported by guarantors. And anybody who can help should help in order to bring this horrible crisis for the world, not just for us, to an end. And then the second phase, of course, is to try and restore what Russia has harmed so badly, and restore the relations as we would like to see it on a stable, peaceful, and prosperous Eurasian continent.
Mr. Piket, is there any solution that you can propose, to end this conflict?
Well, I think that President Jokowi will, after visiting attending the G7 summit, will travel to Ukraine and to Russia to meet with the leaders. We hope very much that, thanks to the fact of Indonesia, what it is in itself, but also Indonesia's capacity as G20 chair, that he will bring his leverage, especially to in the meeting with President Putin and
Zelensky.
And well, I mentioned particularly President Putin because I think that President Zelensky doesn't need to be convinced. If today
doesn't need to be convinced,
if today,
do you believe that
Putin says the war, I stop my war, I withdraw my forces, let's talk, the war will be over. Ukraine wasn't the aggressor,
and no NATO issue.
Well, as I mentioned, it's not even on the agenda, but let's talk.
With it on the table.
So I think I'm totally convinced of that Ukraine won't be fighting a war it never wanted to fight. So, in other words, the key to the solution for this war is in the Kremlin. And I do hope, therefore, that when President Jokowi meets President Putin, he can convince him of a path towards peace.
To be more clear now, what is your expectation that can be played by our government, led by our President Jokowi? What is your expectation?
Well, I'm positive and optimistic. Otherwise, I wouldn't be a diplomat, and one has to be, with at the same time a realistic assessment of the differences. But President Jokowi's weight as Indonesian president and as a chair of the G20, I hope it will create an opening towards peace.
Do you think that what we have done, diplomatically, in doing the political issue in Indonesia, from Indonesia, do you think that it's right up to now?
Well, Indonesia is a historically a non-aligned
yes, the leader of non-aligned movement,
Yeah,
okay.
So I mean that is your the long-standing policy of the country. We have Indonesia is also a strong supporter of multilateralism, which is connected with it, and stresses always the sovereignty of states in bilateral relations, and so we are very close to Indonesia in that respect.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of common ground between us and Indonesia. What makes it different for us is evidently we are in that region, and whereas Indonesia is 8,000–9,000 kilometers removed from it, and the direct impact on security of the EU is of course hard to feel when you're here. But it is a fact for us. It's easy to imagine if you try to think that out in your head for your own country, what an invasion of this scale would mean for your own sense of security. So our response is different, but I do think that on the bottom line of the principles with which we approach this war, Indonesia and EU can look very much in the same direction.
Maybe this is my last question. What is the strongest reason why EU members support Ukraine very much? Why? This is like they are brothers before. Ukraine and Russia, they used to be one big nation.
Well, my answer to that would be then, why wage war against your brothers and sisters? If that is really true, then love your brothers and sisters rather than kill them. And secondly, we are also brothers and sisters of Russia and of Ukraine. It's a simple fact that these links in that part of Europe, the Central East European part, are very close and long-standing, with good memories, with bad memories, but that's history. But they're there, so we are all interconnected in that region. And we are all, as EU, determined to try and seek positive, peaceful and productive relations with everybody on the European continent, including Russia. Not now possible, but we hope it will one day will come back. But Ukraine has been very responsive in that connection. We have a very close political and cooperation relationship with it, people to people. If you drive around Europe under normal circumstances on the motorways, you see there the Ukrainian trucks, many of them. So just as one example, Ukraine is our neighbor, direct neighbor, and of course, whenever something like this happens to a neighbor of yours, a neighbor to whom you are close,
and you will care.
then you will care, and then you will have no choice then but to receive welcome the refugees, to help the government, and in financial terms, and with defense aid, and so that is the reason why Europe, the European Union, was built on the notion of us as a peace project. Post World War II, Europe in ashes, building links between countries so as to forge this union that would make war unthinkable, and so that is part of our genes. So that is something we are implementing also in other parts of Europe, in the Western Balkans, with countries like Albania and Montenegro and North Macedonia. But also we are implementing that on our immediate eastern border, and particularly with, in this case now, Ukraine, and that's why we care. We feel that with the attack on Ukraine, not only Ukraine's survival is at stake, but also peace and stability in Europe as a whole. And if you walk the streets in Europe, then you feel that sense, also amongst normal citizens, not just diplomats.
Your Excellency, because Ukraine and Russia are in Europe continent, yeah? Is there an initiative from EU, to invite Putin and Zelensky to sit together to discuss about peace?
Well, let's see what will happen in the meetings with that President Jokowi will be having, and I think in any future mediation effort, the UN will have to play a role. United Nations. They are, of course, the principal umbrella under which such peace talks should take place. But others can be involved. Turkey has been quite active up to now in mediation. If the EU can play a role usefully, if parties agree to that, then of course we would.
We pray that Pak Jokowi will be the mediator, What do you think?
I'm not speculating on that.
But that's what we hope, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we hope that the war, the conflict will be over as soon as possible. Indeed. I cannot imagine if it still happen. Until the winter, I cannot imagine, the people of Europe, will face the crisis of energy that they need a lot during the winter. Yeah.
Absolutely true.
Yeah. So we pray together. Is there any closing statement you want to make? Please do.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. Wonderful to speak to you. I know that there are many persons in Indonesia who are sympathizing with Russia's cause. I hope that I've brought some observations and factual clarifications from our perspective, but not only ours. And I'm very eager to stay in contact to take this forward. And I do believe that everybody in Indonesia wants peace, and this is a peaceful nation.
Sure. This is a peaceful nation.
It is, and that it believes in the same UN Charter that the EU believes in and wants to support. So let's work on that common perspective.
Your Excellency, we are the victim also from this crisis.
Indeed.
Because I know that we have to allocate very big budgets, to subsidize the energy price, so we can control our inflation. In other countries, inflation going very high. But until when? It should be, there is a limit,
Totally true. Each rupiah, each euro spent on this war is, or on the effects of the war, is a rupiah, euro less for fighting COVID, for for climate action, for socio-economic development, for the SDGs. So there are tremendous costs for us, but also for Indonesia. And
sure.
This is a country that has a fantastic potential and drive, with a perspective of being an affluent country by 2045. We want to focus on that, and we want Indonesia to be able to focus on that rather than on crises that were man-made, like the war on Ukraine.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for being my guest. Yeah, again and again, we hope that this crisis will be over as soon as possible. Itulah dialog saya dengan Duta Besar Uni Eropa untuk Indonesia, ya Mr. Vincent Piket. Ini orang Belanda yang menjadi tamu saya, dan saya berusaha memberikan mengundang tamu-tamu, memberikan banyak perspektif. Ya, sekarang perspektif dari EU. Ya, beliau adalah ambasador atau duta besar dari EU yang mencoba memberikan gambaran tentang konflik Rusia Ukraina. Kita berharap the konflik bisa selesai secepat mungkin supaya kita bisa hidup tenang, mengejar masa depan yang lebih baik, terutama Indonesia. Terima kasih Pak Jokowi sudah take action, datang langsung ke Ukraina dan juga akan menemui Putin, dan semoga ini menjadi solusi yang terbaik dalam rangka untuk mempercepat berhentinya perang Ukraina Rusia. Demikian talk show ini, dan kita jumpa lagi dengan tamu hebat saya selanjutnya. Bye-bye. Terima kasih sudah menonton Helmy Yahya Bicara. Jangan lupa untuk like, komen, share, dan subscribe.